In the beginning there was peace, and in the end there will be peace. But what is here and now is war, not a war of money or land, but rather one of spirituality.
The Bigala crucifix is on a 7-foot piece of wood. It's tempera painted on wood of the Christ figure on the cross of the crucifixion. And in the abdomen of the Christ figure is this erect penis with testicles. And that's pretty good stuff for the 12th century, because if the artist, who remains anonymous, had ever been caught, the church and art, fine art, has used this kind of symbolism, not necessarily an erect penis, throughout our history. It's a part of art.
This figure of a mockery of Christ has utilized embedded imagery to subconsciously stimulate viewers for 700 years. Despite the great accomplishment of the Bigalo, it is no match for the incredible success of the famed San Damiano crucifix.
The San Damiano crucifix is an extremely popular Christian symbol. It is essentially a cross that St. Francis of Assisi prayed to, and which he said spoke to him. But there's some problems with this particular crucifix. And the big problem is it is very much like the Bigalo crucifix, because it also has the underside of testicles and erection painted right in the abdomen of what is supposed to be Christ. Once again, by an unknown Italian artist who wouldn't dare put his name on this particular painting because there would be repercussions should someone had consciously seen that particular erection on the abdomen. This cross is a blasphemous cross. This cross is in the possession of millions of people, and the Franciscans know of this story. When St. Francis died, the Clare nuns took it out of public view for 700 years, meaning they hid it for 700 years. They didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know whether to destroy it, to burn it, or whatever, because it apparently gave some kind of power from it. And since that cross came out again in 1957, displayed during Holy Week, the Vatican decides this is the time to bring this cross out, convinces the Clares to do so. It has been copied throughout the world. The hands of the saints near the erection gesture toward it as an introduction, as if they're actually speaking about it while holding variation phallic symbols of their own.
Conscious perception can lead you in one direction, and the subconscious can lead you in the opposite direction. They can operate independently or in a similar way. It's a part of the brain about which you know nothing at the conscious level, but which has an enormous effect upon your acceptance of cultural values, on your ability to, on your emotional involvements. There's no part of your brain we can point at and say this is the unconscious, but it's something, the effects of which you can measure and you can observe and you can validate.
The risk for the artist embedding images is that they can and will be found after conscious examination, and with ease by the embed expert, rendering them as regular images into the conscious mind.
In the center of the retina is a little dense group of cells called the fovea, and this fovea moves in saccades. When you have the perception that you're seeing the whole scene, you're not. You're seeing point to point to point. Now, wherever this fovea hits, you're going to perceive what it's hitting in the eye, the object it's reflecting at a conscious level. So if you were to put something in that aim as the unconscious, you would plan it off fovea. Now, the early studies of this were done with billboard advertising. It's astonishing. I mean, these billboards, they work this thing out very scientifically. It's quite an expensive media. And then they came up with a machine called a pupillometer, which did the whole thing electronically, and made it very simple for any even relatively small advertising agency to test its ads with this. But it tracks what the eye is actually striking. And perceiving at a cognitive or at the unconscious level. The brain is taking in all the information. I think in perception you have to assume it's instantaneous, operating, they say, at the speed of light. And it takes in everything. It's total. Everything goes into your brain.
Artists use subconscious stimulation because they don't necessarily have to tell you what they're doing. It's fantastic. They can get you to buy a product. They can get you to buy a religion, buy into something. And by using a sexual stimuli in combination with horror, they can infer the blasphemy, if it's Christianity, for example, the horror side, but make you feel good about it because there's sex involved at the same time. And to do it all subconsciously or unconsciously is the key, because when you're looking at something, your eye is picking up every detail of it subconsciously, but you have to focus your fovea on the very pinpoint of the particular painting, picture, or walking down the street. And if you don't do that, you're not going to pick it up. You're not going to remember it consciously. Artists use this because it's extremely powerful. You get the message across without actually telling the person consciously.
These things have profound effects upon the subconscious. And if you can introduce these into an art form, you embed that idea of the art into the brain very, very deeply, and it will persist indefinitely. Otherwise, art is simply a picture, a drawing, a sculpture. It has no meaning at all beyond just simply something you observe.
Leonardo da Vinci, obviously extremely well-known, famous artist, but there are many things that we don't normally know as a general population about Leonardo da Vinci. One is that he was most likely homosexual. He did in fact have sex with an underage boy and went underneath the judge to essentially have this sort of dismissed. The Last Supper. The big deal over this painting is that John is shown as a woman. Or is it really John? Well, actually, John is known as the apostle that Jesus loved. Peter and the one that he loved. So it's Peter and somebody else, which is always known to be John. So Da Vinci paints John as a woman, and that really is the embed. One of the examples is St. John the Baptist. St. John the Baptist, a man, but here painted by Da Vinci as an androgynous person. Half man, half woman, possibly almost all woman. If you look at this painting, you can see it's quite feminine. So an excellent story with respect to the Da Vinci Code, but fiction in a sense that, okay, John's a woman, but it's so feminine that we're going to maybe make her something out to be Mary Magdalene, and then we're going to use a terrific caper to find out that she's really the cup of Christ and she's the Holy Grail. An excellent story in the fact that it's interesting, certainly not true, but all started hundreds of years ago by Da Vinci adding the embed and making John essentially a woman. Another Renaissance artist who was clearly homosexual was Sandro Botticelli. So you have here a famous painting from Sandro Botticelli, Adoration of the Magi. But a lot of things are going on here that are inappropriate. He instilled two homosexual scenes inside this painting. The first one is to the left. A lot of times you'll see a horse or an animal to signify sex. This one has a horse peering in on the left side of this particular painting, and two guys grasping each other, one right from behind, left hand and right hand, one on the forearm, one on the shoulder area, and they're both wearing really, really short skirts. As you can see, the foot of the guy behind the person in the front has his heel raised, as if he's about to drive something behind this guy. You have to watch all of the places, all of the pieces of the body. Again, everything is planned, everything is sketched. The man in the front is holding a very long sword right through his crotch area, and part of it is sticking up. The person on the left of them is holding another phallic symbol and pointing his hand of, hey, what's going on here? Meaning, let's look over to our left. But these guys really don't care what's happening behind them. I mean, after all, this is the birth of Christ, and this is a special time. Three wise men are in town who are the sons of the Medici family that actually commissioned the painting. But they don't care about that. They care about fooling around. If you look at the man who's grabbing the one in the front, his eye is clearly looking down at the man's crotch. He just don't care whatsoever what's going on behind them. And then across the way, you have another man who is on his knees, bending over, bending forward. And he's turned around looking up at a man behind him. And the man behind him has his hips rotated, his knee bent out, and his heels clicked toward each other, as if his torso is about to be engaged in a forward motion. This is hidden by some person, thing, jumping in between to stop what you see here. But that person actually has no face, hiding what's going on behind that particular scenario in front of Christ. The person who is kneeling is looking back and up at the person who's doing this rotation. As you move over to the right of this painting, you have, of course, the androgynous person. A person, not male, not female. Is he or she pregnant? What is it? Is it a fat guy? Is it a pregnant woman? Actually, it's Botticelli looking directly at you. Doesn't care what's happening over here with Christ. And if you look in the stomach area, you see again the A for Antichrist. So suggestion that that could have been the Antichrist, or it should have been the Antichrist.